All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar. Really excited for this discussion. We're going to give folks a couple minutes to file in, so feel free to get a snack, get a sip of water, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. All right, we'll be getting started in just a minute or two, but for those of you that are with us right now, would love for you to enter into the chat where you're joining us from today, what institution you're at. Always love seeing where folks are coming from. All right, starting to see some folks coming in here. University of Nebraska, Cayman Islands, welcome. Thanks so much everyone for joining. Great, lots of folks joining us from community colleges, technical colleges, Utah State. Great to see so many folks entering the chat here. Great, looks like folks all over the country joining us. Central Illinois, very close to where one of our guests is today. All right, this is wonderful. Great to see so many folks joining us. Well, I think we can probably go ahead and get started. Thanks so much everyone for joining us today on our webinar about really helping to think about jumpstarting guided pathways mapping when it comes to those innovative curriculum practices. So I wanted to do a brief round of introductions before we really jump into things. So hi everyone, my name is Bridget Moran. I'm the content strategy lead here at CourseDog. So really thinking about best practices, research when it comes to all things academic operations. So excited to be speaking with you all today. I'm also happy to say that I am joined by one of our partners at Illinois Central College. So Stacey, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Bridget. I do appreciate that. Like Bridget said, I am Stacy Gehrig. I'm the Curriculum Scheduling and Assessment Officer here at Illinois Central College. And we are thrilled to be a part of this conversation today because we've had lots of success using CourseDog in the different modules with the curriculum, the scheduling, the events piece, and with the catalog. I think I mentioned them all. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Stacey. All right, well, before we dive into things, want to give a quick overview of what we're planning to talk about today. So first off, a really big one, we'll be talking about what pieces of data we should be looking at to align curricula with pathways and identify any barriers that may exist. And next, we'll spend some time going over why schedule optimization is so important when it comes to promoting pathway accessibility, particularly for many of our underserved student populations. And then finally, we'll discuss what elements you need to consider when creating and advertising your curricula as part of a program map. After we talk about this, you'll hopefully be hearing less from me and more today from our guest, Stacey. So I'm really excited for this discussion that we have lined up and to learn more about her experience implementing guided pathways at Illinois Central College. For the last portion of today's session, my colleague Kevin is going to join us, and he's going to do a brief demo to highlight how technology can help you organize your curriculum into program maps. I'll also note that we're going to do a few polls throughout today's session. Really looking forward to getting your perspective on this topic and learn more about how you're approaching curriculum transformation and guided pathways at your institution. So now that we've gotten all those logistics out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into things. Before this webinar, we reached out to some of you to learn why you're interested in this topic. And we heard back from leaders from institutions of all shapes and sizes. A couple of themes emerged from these responses. These first two comments here highlight the sometimes limited nature of program maps and how institutions want to use them to achieve more. One leader noted that sometimes program maps can focus a lot on the upcoming term, but not so much on that long-term holistic view. Another leader told us that program maps only provide limited information. This can certainly happen sometimes. And then finally, one administrator told us how important scheduling is when it comes to guided pathways. This is a topic that I spent a lot of time thinking about, is certainly near and dear to my heart. If students can't access the courses they need when they need them, then what good will a program map even be to them? So we'll discuss these topics and more in upcoming slides. But first, why are we talking about guided pathways today? I think everyone on the line can agree that we want more students to finish their programs and finish their programs on time. The number of credits that a student takes in their first year is a strong indicator of if a student will complete their program on time. The data here on this slide really shows just how far we all have to go. Across the board, students aren't taking enough credits to finish their degree on time. And while there are variations across institutional segments, we all definitely have some work to do here. On the left, you'll see the average credit hours taken by all students in their first year, and it really paints an alarming picture. However, on the right, it's even more concerning if you look at all the number of credit hours taken by Pell Grant students in their first year. If you look at the comparisons at two-year institutions, only 12% of all first-year students take 30 credits, while just 9% of their Pell Grant peers take 30 credits in their first year. At four-year institutions, excluding those research institutions, 31% of all students take 30 credits in their first year, while just 26% of Pell Grant students at those same institutions take 30 credits. This is certainly concerning for a number of reasons, and one of the reasons why we're talking about aligning our curriculum with program maps today. So what was the impetus for the guided pathways reform? To simply put it, students were really overwhelmed by all the options that they had. Not only did students have to choose from a bewildering array of options, but these choices could sometimes feel somewhat random. Students struggled to see how their courses cohesively came together and led to outcomes such as attaining certain skills, transferring to a four-year institution, or landing a job in a certain field. Students also had little guidance on how to navigate the multitude of courses they had to choose from. And first generation and underserved students particularly suffered the consequences of this. So enter guided pathways. A reform really aimed at simplifying student choices, making the connection to learning outcomes, and providing students with support. Rather than providing students with what some would refer to as kind of that, cafeteria style of course options, students are now presented with what's more like a tasting menu to select their courses from. When students are deciding between which courses to take or which program to enroll in, they're now given concrete examples of learning outcomes. They're able to see what program completion will lead to, whether that's employment, transferring to a four-year institution, or continuing on to another credential. Finally, students are supported at each step of the way. This includes not only helping students choose and enter a pathway, but also helping them navigate course selection at each term, assisting them with developing a personalized academic program, and of course, providing that career support along the way. So what do all of these goals look like in practice? The original authors of Guided Pathways broke it down into 4 pillars. These pillars include clarifying paths to student end goals, helping students get on path, helping students then stay on that path, and ensuring that students are learning across programs. This can be a lot. I truly know that. And Guided Pathways development and implementation is often a multi-year process at most institutions. So it can be helpful to just kind of focus on one step at a time to make it more manageable. Today, we'll primarily be focusing on the first pillar, clarifying paths to student end goals. I really like the way that Complete College America put it when it comes to clarifying paths to student end goals. A guided path is like a GPS, and that it helps students know their location along their chosen path. They can see the progress they've made and what courses clearly come next. Before we dive into some of the specific practices around aligning your curriculum with pathways, I want to make sure we're on the same page in terms of our terminology. This slide helps break down how guided pathways are organized. From a bird's eye view, pathways are organized under broad umbrellas known as meta majors. Meta majors are a collection of academic programs that fall into the same general field, whether that's business, health sciences, or education. These meta majors are easy to understand from an outsider's perspective. On the right, within a meta major lives a collection of programs. These are the traditional academic programs that we all know, and the students will eventually receive their credential in upon completion. When we talk about guided pathways, this means that institutions are creating maps for each program, often known as program maps. During today's session, I'll primarily be referring to maps at the program level and not focusing so much on the creation of meta majors. So with all of that out of the way, let's move on and talk about how we can use data to align curricula and identify barriers that may be living within our curricular as it's currently organized today. Specifically, we'll look at which courses should be included in program maps and the types of hidden barriers to look out for when it comes to creating program maps. I know the process for deciding which courses to even include in a program map can be overwhelming. For GE courses alone, one study I read said that community colleges on average require students to select about a dozen or so courses from a mixed bag of 162 approved courses to meet those GE requirements. That's a lot to deal with. So when it comes to actually deciding which courses to include, I think it makes sense to start with some of the non-negotiables. At the top of the slide, you'll see some considerations in order from most to least stringent. Obviously, accreditation requirements and transfer requirements will guide which courses are non-negotiable. From there, it's important to examine recommendations made by local employers or any industry councils or advisory boards that you may have. And then, of course, existing completion requirements at your institution can help provide a framework to work off of. I think what's more interesting to me, though, are the considerations to select courses that will promote student-centric outcomes. For example, many institutions have hundreds of GE courses that students can choose from. When deciding which ones to include in a program map, institutions should look at past student success in those courses that you're considering. This might include looking at transcripts of alumni that have successfully completed the program, examining DFW rates, completion rates, or the number of attempts it took students to successfully complete the course. Next, including courses in the first term and year that can be easily transferred to other programs, especially within the same meta major. That's really key. By shepherding students into courses that can count towards multiple programs, students have more time to explore their interests. And if they do decide to switch their program, they won't have taken these courses for nothing and fall behind. I was reading a study the other day by two professors at Kansas State, and they highlighted just how many students actually do change their program. The study found that 50% of students at community colleges entering STEM programs either changed programs or left the program altogether. This was also true for 57% of students entering health sciences programs and 45% of students entering social and behavioral science programs. Finally, early exposure to discipline courses is important to allow students to gauge their fit within the program. It gives them an opportunity to see if their interests and strengths align with the program they intend to complete. It's especially important for programs with requirements to even get accepted into that program in the first place, such as nursing or some other health sciences programs. These guidelines for deciding which courses to include are a helpful starting point, but it's also equally important to decide what shouldn't be included in a program map. While creating program maps can be quite the process, I think it's also a really exciting opportunity for institutions to identify barriers or hidden requirements that may have previously flown under the radar. Starting on the left, the program mapping process is a great opportunity to identify courses listed that are rarely or maybe even never offered. Well, once these courses are identified, institutions may be able to remove them from the catalog and cut down on the number of options that students are presented with. Next, this is an opportunity to identify courses that maybe haven't been looked at in a while and perhaps no longer meet industry standards. These courses may need to be either updated or discontinued. On the top, hidden prereqs. This is a really big one. If students are unaware that certain courses serves as prereqs in order to progress, they may not register for the course. It's only until they attempt to register for the preceding required course that they find they're ineligible and have to pause their progression until they complete that prereq. Prereq courses should be publicly noted in all areas where students may access curriculum and program requirements, including the catalog, website, and degree planning tools. Next, courses that can count towards both GE and program requirements. I really love this one because I think it's a win-win. If students are aware of a course that will count towards 2 requirements, they're able to stay on track for timely completion and avoid taking potentially unnecessary credits. Finally, elective courses that aren't eligible for transfer requirements. This can be a tricky one. Institutions should examine transfer requirements for other institutions within their state higher education system or institutions that their students commonly transfer to, and ensure that elective students complete will count towards transfer requirements. If an elective won't count towards a transfer requirement, students should know this upfront so they don't complete the course, only to find out later on that they'll need to take another course, potentially delaying them. All right, well, I know that was a lot of talking on my part, so excited to hear from you all about this. We just discussed some of the barriers that you might discover when it comes to actually mapping out a program. So I'd love to hear from you about which barriers you've uncovered during the program mapping process. I know that there are definitely other things that could come up here, so feel free to go ahead and put that into the chat if there's something else that comes to mind. So let's go ahead and launch the poll now, and we'll leave it open for about 60 seconds or so to let folks really give their answers and have them come in. All right. So let's have that poll open, see the responses coming in. And yes, I see one question in the chat. We will be sharing this deck afterwards. All right, well, thanks so much everyone for sending in those responses. Leave it open for just another couple seconds and then we can go ahead and close it. All right, we're probably good to go ahead and close that poll now. Yes, problem with course transfer agreements. That's another big one. All right, great. Well, thanks so much everyone for participating in that poll. Really great to see everyone's responses here. It looks like the responses are being shared now. Perfect. Yep, seeing a couple more things come in the chat here. Infrastructure to support the pathway. That's definitely a big one. All right, great. Well, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here. So next, we are going to be talking about schedule optimization to promote pathway accessibility. This is a topic that we're really passionate about here at CourseDog. If any of you joined our last webinar, you'll know that we talked about this subject in depth. So today we'll be talking about course access considerations for underserved student groups, and we'll also be talking about some scheduling metrics that you should be looking at to ensure that all students are staying on path to the courses that they need. I really love this quote here. I think it's so important. I think it really exemplifies why program creation within itself isn't enough to successfully keep students on path. Davis Jenkins at the Community College Research Center out of Columbia noted that while program maps and meta majors provide better information, it doesn't necessarily change the student experience. And that's why we're going to be discussing scheduling today to make sure our students can actually access the courses that they need. While course accessibility challenges certainly impact all students, we know they have an outsized impact on our most underserved student populations. We could probably talk about this slide all day long, so I'll just go over a couple of examples. I know many administrators are worried about employed students being able to access the courses they need while also balancing their jobs. And will these students be able to take all the courses they need either before or after they go to work? These students often can't afford to be on campus all day and have their classes spread out over 7-8 hours. Other students are disproportionately impacted by scheduling errors. For example, if 2 required courses are accidentally scheduled at the same time, students are forced to choose between courses and as a result, may not be able to take a full load of courses. This can impact students that need to maintain a certain load in order to qualify for financial aid. Similarly, if a course with variable units is incorrectly marked, students may find out only after they registered for the course that they won't actually receive the number of credits they were expecting. While these errors may not happen often, when they do, it can really have large ramifications for our underserved students. I know this slide doesn't even cover all of the various student groups that we talk about when it comes to course access. I've talked with other administrators that are concerned about, say, course access for transfer students, students that might commute home on the weekends, gap year students, or student athletes even in some cases. The list really can go on and on here. So I know we just talked about some of those student groups that can be impacted by the schedule when it isn't created with their needs in mind. So we'd love to hear from you about which groups of students on campus you're most worried about accessing the courses they need to stay on path. So great, the poll just went live here. So would love for you all to go ahead and select which group of students you are most concerned about on your campus. Similarly, we'll leave this open for about a minute or so to wait for responses to go ahead and trickle in. All right, see about another 30 seconds. First generation non-native English speakers can be impacted. That's a great point, Tracy. Yep, more comments about first generation students, transfer students, all great points here. Yep, another first generation. All right, looks like we'll need to include that on the poll next time. All right, well, looks like we just closed the poll here and very interesting results. So it looks like we have about almost a tie between employed students and low income students. Yeah, I think that really tracks from what I've heard from a lot of higher ed leaders. We actually asked this same question on our last webinar, and I was curious to see how the results would differ. And employed students and low income students were the top 2 for that as well. So definitely seems like an area of focus for many of us. All right, well, hopefully that resonates well then with our next slide, where we go a little more in depth about some of these student groups. So want to dive more into needs of just a few of the groups that we had listed on the previous slide. So first, students with children. These students often have time constraints due to their caretaking responsibilities, and they need to complete their courses during school hours. Institutions with large populations of students with children should consider questions such as, How far away are those local K through 12 schools from campus? What times are those schools in session? And if those schools or other local organizations offer childcare before and after school. For example, I was talking with one community college administrator recently, and she was telling me that many of their students have children that go to local schools. In order to accommodate this large population of students, they're introducing scheduling bans that allow students to take all of their classes between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. After their classes finish at 2 p.m., they'll have enough time to go ahead and pick up their kids from school. Employed students are another population. I know that rose to the top in the poll we just did. So institutions should really examine what types of industries their students work in, major employers in those industries in their local communities, and hours of operation. For example, if students commonly work in the retail and hospitality industries, these industries often need more workers in the afternoons and evenings. Next, how are students that rely on public transportation able to access their courses? Do any of the courses begin, say, before the first bus arrives? Do any courses end after that last public transportation option leaves? And if, say, a bus doesn't arrive frequently at night, will students have a safe place to wait after their course ends? And finally, low-income students, another group that really rose to the top on our poll. Institutions need to think more holistically about how course access and timing also relates to other student services that students may rely on. For example, can students easily access tutoring services or technology labs before or after scheduled classes? Will cafeterias or food carts be open or near where courses are offered? And I know we could probably spend endless time talking about that. So I want to move on and talk about some practices that will actually help us meet those needs. There's so much data out there that can help us build a schedule that puts student needs first. And we've listed just a few of them on this slide here. First, course distribution throughout the day and week. I'm sure all of you have experienced pain points here. Classes are packed between 10 and 2, and faculty may be reluctant to teach outside of those hours, even if it's when students may need to take their courses. I was talking with one administrator, and she told me that a student working in her office told her that she couldn't work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When she asked why, the student told her that all of the classes they needed to take were only offered Tuesday and Thursday, so they were jam-packed in classes all day long. Course distribution is also important in the context of program maps. For example, if a student signs up for a program with the expectation that they'll be able to take all of their classes at night, all the courses need to be offered at night as they progress. They shouldn't complete 2 terms and then only find out as they attempt to register for the 3rd term that none of the classes they need are offered at night. The course and section fill rates are another important metric to examine here. Particularly in popular GE courses or milestone courses, institutions should look to see if all the sections offered are consistently at capacity. This may be an indication that not all students are able to access the courses that they need. I won't go over each individual data point here, but the questions listed on this slide are a good starting point to see if students can indeed access all the courses they need along their path as they progress. For our final section, before we get to our discussion with Stacey, we're going to quickly walk through creating and advertising accessible maps. We'll go through some essentials to include in program maps outside of just listing those course sequences. Next, we'll touch on accessibility guidelines. And finally, we'll talk about the importance of having consistent information about your program maps, no matter where a student's looking at it. I think when a lot of folks initially think of a program map, they think of a list of course sequences. And this is certainly important and one of the major purposes of creating program maps. However, a program map can and really should contain more than just a list of courses. First, job information. This is essential to help students see the connection between the program and future employment. There are many places you can find labor market information, such as public sources like the Bureau of Labor Statistics or through labor market analytics providers like MZ. In a former life, I actually used to do market research for institutions considering new program launches. So I'll say that not all labor market sources are equal. So make sure the information you're checking the information you're linking your students to to make sure it's relevant, accurate, and also provides detailed enough information. I can't tell you the number of times physician came up as one of the top occupations for programs that clearly were not medical programs at all. Listing recommended minimum grades also helps students understand what they need to achieve to have success in the program, or perhaps even be admitted into the program in the first place. Highlighting the target audience of the program map is another essential one, especially if a program has multiple different maps. For example, some institutions choose to build slightly different maps that take into account the different requirements of transfer institutions. For example, a student at a California community college may need to complete different requirements depending on if they're planning to transfer to a CSU or a UC system campus. The last item I'll highlight here are milestone actions. Most program maps will note key milestone courses that students need to complete, but this is also an opportunity to remind students of milestone actions. These actions could include meeting with an advisor before registering for the next term or registering for graduation. Obviously, this can become a lot of information to display in one place. So I think this is where it's really helpful to see how other institutions have structured their program maps to get a feel for the different types of formats and what makes most sense for your institution. Of course, an essential part of any discussion about accessibility should also include making sure that students of all abilities can access resources that were built for them. I listed just a few considerations here to make sure students can access program maps that live online. Some of these considerations include making sure online maps are compatible with functionalities such as a screen reader, navigation by keyboard, and screen magnification. I'll also note that your team should make sure these functionalities don't just work on desktop navigation, but also on mobile and tablet devices. To make sure you aren't missing anything here, I would definitely recommend working with either your IT office or your student accessibility office to make sure that you're meeting the most up-to-date standards. All right, well, we are almost there before our discussion with Stacey. One last final slide here. I know this is a topic that Stacey and I have talked about a lot, and that's that program maps don't live in a vacuum, and they certainly don't live in just one place. I think the catalog is the first place that many of us think of when it comes to where we house our curriculum and program maps. And the catalog represents, you could almost call it the public contract between the institution and the student for the requirements and policies that students must follow to successfully complete their program. This is really important, but there are also a couple of other places students can access their program information. The website's a big one. Students are more likely to do for a Google search for what they're looking for before navigating from an institution's homepage in search of the information. The website also serves as an advertising tool for prospective students considering your institution and potential programs. And finally, if your institution uses a student degree planner tool, this is where students go to actually plan their schedule for upcoming terms. This is where they chart out their course and create a plan that makes most sense for their individual circumstances. It's key that all three of these mediums present the same information to prevent confusion and make sure students don't get off track or take unproductive credits. So with all of that talking by me out of the way, really excited to jump into our discussion with Stacey from Illinois Central College and learn more about her experience with guided pathways. So thanks so much again, Stacey, for taking the time to join us today.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, I know we have a number of questions that Stacey and I have prepared, but if you all have any questions throughout this discussion, please feel free to go ahead and drop that into the chat function or the Q&A function. But to begin with, Stacey, I would love to hear kind of about, what were ICC's motivations for implementing guided pathways, and why is this more relevant now than ever?
Thanks, Bridget. Here at Illinois Central College, we had an interest in getting our guided pathways put together so that a student can be more focused and end up completing either in a short-term credential, like a certificate that could lead to that job, that career, and or that short-term certificate that could then go into an Associate of Applied Science degree. Or even being able to then take a associate in arts or associate in science to move on to the transfer schools. What we found is that we had very good curriculum offered, but students sometimes got lost trying to find their way in the catalog. Our catalog used to be a printed catalog that was developed, it was designed alphabetically. So if a student did not know exactly what the name of the program was called here, and sometimes we use some pretty technical terminology to describe some of our programs, the student may not find it. So we had the motivation to have that guided pathway to help students get what they needed in a more timely manner. We also provided information for our students in regards to prospective jobs. I think you had mentioned that with some of the data out there that can be utilized, not just a job, but a career path for them. Also providing typical wages for in our region, and also the industry credentials that may go along with a career path. We have welding as a program here at Illinois Central College. So it's not just our certificate and our associate degree here with welding, but also what the American Welding Society provides for that industry credential that the student can then take with them to go land that job. It was also important with the guided pathways that I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit with the career clusters that we have. So if a student started off, let's say they thought they wanted to be an accountant and started taking some classes and that didn't quite find the interest that they were looking for, some of those core classes that they took in accounting, they could end up maybe gearing more towards a business area. So it wasn't like they lost time by changing their way, changing their pathway.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear, Stacy. So it sounds like it's really helped you, rethink how your curriculum is presented to the public, especially students. So would love to hear about, kind of more in depth, how have guided pathways helped you innovate your curriculum?
As far as innovating our curriculum, one of the things that we did, like I said, we're using the career clusters. And with the career clusters, Illinois State has 16 career clusters, career pathways, and we have taken those and divided those down into a little more precise into 7 of them. And with those 7, we have those mapped out in our online catalog. And we also have those with the advising model that we use. So students are grouped in that way. So they have a advisor that is going to be able to advise them, whether it's like in the health careers area, or if it's going to be in our information technology area. And then we use that not only for the catalog and for advising, but also on our website. And I do want to point out, as excited as I am to talk about our website, we are still in developing that website. We have a new website redesign that's going to be coming out over the summer. So if you go to icc.edu right now, you'll see some of that alignment happening right now, but we're going to revamp our website, which we're excited about. So please look back at icc.edu sometime in the summer so you can see a new and improved website that we're going to have. But as far as innovating our curriculum as well, with some of the work that we've done, we found that it gave us the opportunity to revamp some of the curriculum in regards to helping students explore. One of the leading areas is our health careers area. They have put together some introductory type courses so students can step in and see if this is truly a career that they're interested in. So we have things like a dental hygiene 100, Surg Tech 100, Rad Tech 100, where it's an exploratory course. It's only a half a credit hour. They typically meet on a Saturday for 8 hours. And the faculty introduce the students to, just to summarize, the good, the bad, and the ugly in regards to the career path for the students. And then that way the students have a better idea if this is truly for them. We think it really helps the students to finalize if this is something they want to do instead of waiting and taking, course after course or semester after semester, and then realizing, oh, this is not what I thought a career in dental hygiene might be. They can get a better idea of that right away. And then maybe they think, oh, dental hygiene may not be for me, but maybe I want to do something like in the radiography area instead. So that way we can get that sooner rather than later. Another thing that we noticed is that some of the naming of our programs kind of got lost. So if we group them together based off of the career clusters, that helped also with our website and then the catalog. A really good example is we just recently had a small certificate. It used to be called Small Business Certificate, changed their name to Entrepreneurship. And we found that that is driving more students to that certificate because of the name change. And we don't know the results of it yet, but we had another program who just got approval and changed their name from paralegal to legal studies. And again, when we're thinking about what are students looking for, I don't want to say we need to simplify it, but sometimes just having what are those key terms that somebody's going to be looking for is a lot more beneficial for students than having some of that big terminology that a student may not recognize or know that they're interested in. Plus having it grouped together in those career clusters will be very beneficial as well. You're muted there, Bridget. I don't know if we can. Okay.
Sorry about that. You know, when you're sharing your screen and the navigation bar goes away completely, well, that is where I was at. So thank you for bearing with me. But no, I really love that, Stacy. So it sounds like, you know, guided pathways was almost a branding exercise in some ways of thinking about, you know, how can we make sure that students actually know about these programs? You know, there's interest out there. It's just a matter of making sure that students are able to find that. So I really loved that. Stacy, during my portion of today's session, I talked a little bit about scheduling and the role that that helps students staying on path. I know that this is something ICC has thought about a lot. So I would love for you to talk about that and what role scheduling bands may play in this.
Right. We have really taken a hard look at our schedule, especially because we've had so much fluctuation because of COVID, which I assume a lot of people have also had that as a barrier. But when we look at the schedule, we found that one of the things that we've done in the past is we start off with a great intention of offering, for example, a small short-term certificate, and we'd offer it in the evening. But then we found by the time that they would get to those higher level courses, we didn't have enough enrollment. So then we offered those during the daytime where we would pick up more students for those courses. Well, we started off in the evening and then we switched it to the morning, and then students, because of their schedule and their life, the data showed us when we started looking at it through the CourseDog scheduling software that we lost that student base and they weren't completing. So now we are doing a better job at being able to say, okay, if you are starting a program, we're making sure that we offer those classes through what we're calling the different bands or the different segments. Morning, we've got afternoon, we've got the evening, and we also have like the online opportunities as well, online only. And by doing that, we're seeing that we do have better opportunities for students to be able to complete those programs because of that. Something that we're starting this fall that we're very excited about is that we're offering more courses, especially our general education courses and some of our transfer courses, in more of a Monday, Wednesday, and a Tuesday, Thursday format. And we're offering a little bit less of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. We did a student survey and found out that students had more interest in coming maybe 2 days a week for Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, instead of 3 days a week. And we still have classes on Fridays, but some of those classes are typically for those higher credit hour courses, especially those math courses that have 4 credit hours or 5 credit hours that need more of those time with the students. And then also for some of the labs on Fridays, or some of our career and technical areas that might need to have that Friday time spent there. But a good chunk of our courses are going to a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday format. And so now we're able to kind of chunk those out, like you said, banding, and offer and make sure that we've got those schedules so we don't have overlap. And not only with those banding of that, but we also are seeing a trend now, which we weren't doing as good of a job with before. We're starting to see standard start times. So that way we don't have the fluctuating start times that cross over, which then I think you used the example earlier where students have to have these two different courses to be able to complete, but they're offered at the same time. We had a tendency at times to do that too, where it's the biology course and the chemistry course were both offered, but they were slightly overlapping. And unfortunately, a student had to make a choice of which one to take, or had to go to both professors and get the permission to, miss a little bit of this class or show up a little late for this class and miss it. And that's not in the best interest of our students, as we know. So yeah, so we're excited about making those kind of changes and having the data from CourseDog's schedule to show that to us in a nice, easy format for us to be able to display.
That's great to hear. And Stacey, I know you briefly mentioned that modalities can sometimes play into this. We had a question come in a couple minutes ago about what role different modality options play when it comes to creating a course map. Is that something that ICC is noting on their program maps, or you can speak to it all?
We haven't started that yet. We've discussed it a little bit, but we haven't laid that out. But there has been conversation here. We've got a lot going on because we implemented CourseDog, all the modules with the events, with the schedule, with the curriculum and the catalog, like I mentioned at the very beginning with my introduction. So building that out, plus we're also updating our website. We haven't had the opportunity yet to say that this is a curriculum map or a degree map laid out that is entirely in the evening or entirely during the day. I do want to point out that is an interest that we're looking at so that we can show that to students. Another thing that we are embarking on and we're hoping to have up and running for our fall advising session, which is just around the corner, is we have focused predominantly, which a lot of schools have done, in really laying out our degree maps and our plans for students for the full-time student. And the majority of our students here at Illinois Central College are part-time students. We're very fortunate that we've got Dr. Sheila Quirk-Bailey, our president here at the college, who is forward thinking and identified that early on and has given us the empowerment to be able to work and try to do what we can to try to identify what programs, what courses can we lay out to better serve our part-time students. So we're very excited working on that to not just serve the full-time students that can be here during the day, but what about those part-time students that only can be here for maybe 2 days out of the week, or maybe can only come in the evening, or can only take online classes? So we're doing what we can to try to show what programs, what courses are available for those students as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I know we're almost coming to the end of our discussion portion, Stacey, but are there any parting words or advice you would give to folks that are just embarking on this journey of creating program maps, guided pathways? What do you wish you knew when you were first starting this process?
I guess one of the things I would mention is I wish we had a little bit more of, we've always been a data-driven here at the school, data-driven process. But if we would have taken the time to look at things like where are our hidden prerequisites on courses, what are some of those barriers for our students before really diving in, I think that could have served us a little bit better. I would also try to encourage you to use some of your faculty and maybe some of your dean leaders, especially in the career and technical education areas, because those are the areas that have very prescriptive maps laid out. You have to take these courses in this order. They also have like the general education courses that are prescribed. And those are your best advocate for the guided pathways and the degree maps. Not that I'm saying that our liberal arts and science faculty aren't great to work with and don't have that, but when you have a multitude of choices, I kind of align it to going to a restaurant. When you sit down and you've got a menu and you've got too big of a menu, too many choices, sometimes I think that can be a little overwhelming for our students. And so I think if we could do a little better at kind of laying things out and giving a little fewer choices to students, that will feel a little bit more comforting to our students and make them feel like they can actually complete. And that's what we've seen when we started laying things out for them. They can see the end of the quote unquote map. They can see the end of that pathway. They can see the completion.
That's wonderful. That makes a lot of sense to me. I almost think about it when you sit down and say Cheesecake Factory and they hand you a book for the menu. And you're like, what do I even do here? I don't know where to begin. So I think that's really wonderful advice. Thanks so much for joining us, Stacy.
Yeah,
We
thank you.
really appreciate your insight and sharing your time with all of us today.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague, Kevin, to tell us a little bit more about what role technology actually plays in this process and how it can help folks really develop those curriculum maps.
Thanks so much, Bridget. So for context, my name is Kevin Wu. I'm a product manager here at CourseDog, focused on our curriculum product. So first of all, I'd love to say I saw some Alabama in the chat. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, specifically the Columbia Southern Stillman folks, so welcome. So what we're trying to do here at CourseDog is build an academic operations suite to address the issues that we've been discussing on the call today. So our belief is that when you have end-to-end planning and display of the data, and you can manage it, that helps you plan much better curriculum and offer better courses and programs for your students. So it all starts with curriculum, where you can manage your courses and programs, manage the workflows, manage the data over time. And then with our catalog tool, you can display that. But importantly, what we're doing with demand analytics is giving you the ability to interact with that data, say, given your student population, given you these courses, using your data to help you determine what you should schedule by providing course and section recommendations. And our scheduling tool gives you the ability to optimize your schedule and actually build it. But what I'd love to do in today's chat is talk more about requirements and degree maps, which of course we built exactly because we noted this problem where students have a myriad of courses that they can choose from, a myriad of programs, and it's unclear how they can take them to succeed. So Bridget, do you mind if I go ahead and take over the screen share?
Yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Great. And can we all see this okay?
Looks good.
Great. So let's go ahead. This is our CourseDog interface, and this is our curriculum interface. And so here you can see a listing of all of our programs. Let's jump into the biological chemistry program. So you can see here we've got basic information such as the effective dates of it. But let's go down to what's important. So the first part is requirements. So you can see here that we give you the ability to create structured requirements in the application. What this allows you to do is all this course data is integrated with your SIS, pull these courses into this program to be managed. But the part to really touch on today is degree maps. So we heard a bunch of needs on the call today related to degree maps. So at a high level, what we allow you to do in CourseDog is define as many degree maps as you want to for different purposes. We heard that students have different needs. So for instance, we talked about transfer students, first gen, employed. So with the degree maps tool, we allow you to create degree maps tailored to those kinds of students. So they can come into this program, BioChem, and say, hey, I'm a student, I'm a transfer, I want to see these specific requirements. And you can see here, we've built a name for them, we've created a narrative for them, outlining any specific requirements that they have. The second thing to call out, say with this degree map, is we have a lot of structured data in addition to the courses. So I think Rihanna noted on the call today that you have an issue with perhaps too many credits in a semester. Other people noted we have hidden prerequisites. And that can be a problem if you create degree maps or pathways in a PDF, because you have all of this additional context, such as your requirements, grades, area credits, that might not be surfaced if you're just putting it in a PDF. But when you added a structured data, so you can see here, I've added Bio 152, you can pull all of this other information in automatically to display to your students. And so that's incredibly helpful because as a student, it's very clear what you need to take, when you need to take it, and what the requirements are. And if I come in here, click edit program, you can see I have the ability to say, search for different courses. I can make a dynamic course group here, fundamentals of genetics, and have that information pulled. And there's some automatic calculations done, per Rihanna's point about too many credits, to make sure that doesn't happen. So you can see here, we automatically sum the sum total credits for the per semester, as well as for the entire program. I can identify if something's general education, major, minor, and elective. You can see here, we automatically sum that, giving you, the administrator, the ability to see what's going on with your program, to see if there's any sorts of issues. So we said options between two courses of two different credit values. It's a great question. So what we have here is the ability to set min and max credits. So depending on the logic that you have in your courses, in your course groups, you can say it can be a minimum. So say I set up an OR group. It can be course A or course B. I can say the minimum is the minimum of the courses, and the max would be if I take both courses. And so we built that flexible logic where you can say here, I can add different groups or logic, I can add and logic to make sure you can build highly tailored requirements. So thank you for the question, Terry. And one of the most crucial aspects is change management. So you'll note if you ever try to build out your degree map to requirements using some sort of manual process, whether it be Excel or PDF, et cetera, you know that every semester your curriculum changes, your courses and your programs change, the credits change, your program requirements might change. Think about the impact that it has on every single degree map. Say I change on my fundamental math 101 course or bio 152. Any number of degree maps could be impacted, meaning that what your students need to take goes out of date. Well, with CourseDog, every single requirement, every single one of these requirements selected in the degree map automatically updates as your curriculum changes, meaning you don't have to worry about change management. You don't have to worry about whether or not the information you're explaining to your students is correct. And then on the output, all this information integrates with our catalog tool so that your students, when they're looking at their programs and selecting what to choose, can see these degree maps of different types in the catalog. So I'll take a pause there. Any questions or comments from the group here? Great. We had that one from Terry earlier. Great. Bridget, do you want to progress to the general Q&A?
Sure. I think we have covered most of the questions that have come through today. So just going to cover the last couple of slides that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, it looks like we actually did just have one more question come through, Kevin, that I'll let you take here. So they want to know, how do students see the map?
Yeah, so what we just displayed was the curriculum application, which is admin facing, but on the catalog side, for every one of your catalogs, when you display your program in the catalog, that degree map will be accessible. So as your student navigates to, say, the program page in the catalog, say they go to the biochem page, they'll see those degree maps that we defined there.
Great, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you for the question.
All right, well, that looks like that is all the questions that have come through the chat now. So we have one final poll question that we want to ask you all today before we wrap up the question. Just want to know if anyone is interested in learning more about how CourseDog can help you all develop and implement those student-centric program maps that we've been talking about during today's session. We won't be sharing the results of this poll publicly, so know that will not be shared with the group. So we'll just leave this poll open for about a minute or so, let folks select their answer choice, and then hopefully give everyone back a few minutes in their day so they have a little break before their next meeting. All right, well, thanks everyone who has sent in their responses. Look like there are a few folks who haven't voted yet, so if you could just send in your response. Great. Well, I think we can probably go ahead and wrap up the session then and give everyone a few minutes back. Want to again thank Stacey from Illinois Central College for joining us today. It was so great to hear her perspective and valuable insight from all the work that she's been doing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks Kevin as well for joining us. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the day, everyone. I hope you have a great week.